welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today, I am so excited to be interviewing Anne McKeown, who actually is a neighbour of mine. Don't you find it fascinating when you meet people all around the world just doing business and life as you come in these modern times? And then we started having a chat and thought, oh my goodness, we're actually only a few streets away. So we will soon be having lunch together, I am very, very sure, in the not too distant future. But let me tell you about Anne. She's a highly regarded mindset coach and the founder of 2M Power Coaching. She specializes in empowering women to reignite the spark in their life and work by shifting the psychological barriers that hold them back. She's developed a step-by-step process for success that she shares with individuals and teams that she works with. And her main driver is to be a great role model for her two daughters, Maris and Megan, and they are the two M's in To Empower, her company, and is also a published author and the founder of Sydney Women's Self-Empowerment Meetup, of which she has around 600 members attending her meetup. So welcome to the program, Anne.
Oh, thank you so much, Annie. It's wonderful to be here, and I so admire the work that you're doing, and it's incredible that not only do we have a lot in common, but now we've discovered we're neighbours. It's funny.
It is so funny, and I absolutely love having women on my show who are actually doing very much what is obviously at my heart with Women's Biz Tribe, to be just empowering women to just bring out their best essence. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. And I know that you have had a very interesting journey. You're a woman who actually, I'd love to hear about your history, but I also know that you started your business at around age 50. So those listening in, it is never too late. And I'm often saying that, going, don't worry, you haven't missed the boat. The most amazing things happen with women after 50 for a variety of reasons. So how about you just introduce yourself to the listeners? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to the journey of where you are today.
Yeah, well, I suppose it was in two parts. I actually find as we go through life, we have different breakthroughs and breakdowns at different times. And one of those was when I was 50 and my kids were leaving home. Obviously, I'm not from Australia, so I started to feel a bit lonely and a bit lost, because I'd been a housewife for a lot of years. I'd done a lot of voluntary work. I'd helped in the school. I'd kind of felt as if I'd lost my identity. And I'd lost my confidence as well. And that's when I started to reach out and help other women. Prior to that, early in my life, my boyfriend was killed in a car crash. And that was another life-changing event for me that made me look at what was my life all about. At that point, I was working in corporate and very driven to make money and to be the corporate chick. And just realizing that there were more important things in life. And I think now in my 50s, I'm really able to enjoy that sense of just taking each day as it comes and giving back, and the pleasure in giving up back, and particularly in helping the next generation. I've done quite a lot of work with teenage girls around their mindset, in the hope that maybe we won't have midlife crises and issues to the same detriment when we hit our 40s and 50s.
Yeah. I'm all about that. I know the wisdom that you learn and the freedom that you suddenly get when definitely, I think a little switch went on to me at around mid-30s, and then it got better around mid-40s, and then 50 plus, you just get to this amazing stage of saying quite regularly, oh my goodness, I wish I knew this 20 or 30 years ago. And you wonder, is that, something that you actually have to have your own journeys? Or certainly I believe, you definitely do need to do that to have your own experiences and learnings that are true to you, but you can certainly help people a lot along the way. And I totally relate to that, that phase that I know many people listening in are in, that you just, you're working your butt off, you're working, you're hoping to be good enough, you're you're hoping to climb that ladder, you can get so lost in the busyness. And then usually it is just something random that happens. You know, we'll call it an X factor, I suppose, a moment that then just makes you take stock and go, oh my goodness, is this it? Is this my life? And then also in a time of trauma that you had, you know, who am I anyway? It just rocks your whole existence. So I'd love you to share, if you're able to share, about that time then when your boyfriend was killed, and what you learned about yourself or in that time to sort of really create that, you know, shift for you to go, you know, well, who is Anne? And then now what does it take to actually lean into who Anne truly is, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, well, thank you. Well, the death within itself was sudden. It was a car crash. But after he died, I discovered he was married and had been living a double life. So that was a real shocker, because I suddenly not only was carrying grief, but then guilt and shame, because I started to think, golly, now I'm somebody's mistress. How could I be so stupid? How did I not see the signs? All the lies, you know, had I been living a dream? And where at work I was this really capable young gun making my mark, my personal life was just a shambles. And so it kind of made me reevaluate. And I decided to leave the corporation, because at the time, my boss had asked me to sack quite a lot of people. I'd been working with them for 8 years, helping them build their individual businesses. And I remember going in and saying to them, but I can't do that. They wanted to get rid of licensees and bring in managers because they would pay a lot less for them. And I said to him, but I can't do that. And he said, well, if you don't, someone else will. And it was funny because I really admired my boss at the time. And so these two men in my life, my boss and my boyfriend, both kind of deceived me you know, and challenged my values and everything. And both of those incidents happened in the space of a week. So it was like the universe is trying to tell me something. I'm really just not on the right path. So I just decided to quit my job, and I had saved quite a bit of money, and really I just needed to get away from everything, from all the reminders and all the pressure. And I decided to do some voluntary work. And I went to work in Zimbabwe, helping blind people that needed cataracts, and a bit like what Fred Hollows does here in Australia. And my job was to raise funds, to get a team together, and to basically roll out the whole project. And we had volunteer nurses and doctors come from the US. It was called the Surgical Eye Expedition. It's CSEE. And during that, the reward that I got from people that suddenly had vision, the gifts that they were giving were things like singing us a prayer of thanks, because they had no money. That real human connection and that sense of making a positive difference in someone else's life, it was priceless. Like no salary could give me that sense of satisfaction and well-being and making a difference in the world and who I was meant to be. And so I think then that sort of changed the direction that I was going to take. And I ended up traveling altogether for 3 years. I went to India and I did some work with lepers. I actually came to Australia and I was working for with some people that were homeless through the St. Vincent de Paul Centre. And it was the time in my life when I had the least materially, but I was probably the most content within.
Incredible, isn't it? And what did your daughters notice about you during that time? How old were they, and were they thinking, oh my gosh, mum's now gone loopy and gone off traveling and you know, trying to sort of a bit of an eat, pray, love, trying to find yourself moment? Or was it that they were totally there with you and went, you know, it's actually exciting to see who you truly are?
Well, at that point they weren't around, so that happened before I had kids. But they they saw the whole shift when I hit 50. And I think at that point they did think I'd gone a bit crazy, because I'd gone from being this homemaker to suddenly, I want to do more for me. I want to start a meetup. I want to help other women. You guys have to help with rosters at home, with cooking and cleaning. And I felt like I'd gone from being Cinderella to wanting to be Superwoman. And there was just this, I think it's the hormones, isn't it, that we end up with more testosterone or something. And I still felt at 50 like I hadn't the energy and the drive that I had when I was 25.
I totally relate to that.
Yeah, like my mum, when she was in her 50s, seemed very old. But I think our generation, maybe because we're going to live longer, but I felt I could do something for the next 30 years and enjoy it. And so initially my girls were pretty resistant, because they were having to step up and do more. But now, sort of, that was 7 years ago actually, they now say, oh wow, Mum, look at what you've achieved and what you've done. And because I'm happier, they actually benefit, my husband as well. Everybody benefits from the fact that I'm doing something that I enjoy. And so I'm less of a martyr. I think I had gone through a stage of being woe me, and I was a real martyr about everything, and I wasn't very pleasant to be around.
And I love your openness to share that, because I was actually having a chat on another podcast this morning that I was on about this very topic, that we, as mums, we can become, all into our kids and our our family life and everything. And then this kind of weird passive aggressive thing can sort of happen, that I'm totally, irreplaceable. Everybody needs me. I've got a badge of busyness on my chest, and I'm totally there. But then also you can get quite narky and defensive, because deep down it's kind of like going, but I do want to break, and I don't know who I truly am, and and it's exhausting all the time. And then so I totally relate, and I know that so many millions of other women around the world are going, yes, I totally get that feeling. But then it's also really hard to give that up and shift, and also to appreciate, as you said, that your girls will then, other people will be impacted by that. So when we have those moments, which on paper, you go, yeah, that's right, you shouldn't be, just totally self-sacrificial all the time. You should be owning your own self and going off and doing things that are important to you. But it's also hard because other people go, well, hang on, what about me? They don't necessarily like the new you. They're surprised by it, and it also then has consequences to them, such as making their own lunches and beds and bits and pieces. And although they get to the end of that journey and suddenly go, oh yeah, I'm so proud of you, Mum, it's not always that easy when you're just activating, when you just start.
And I think it also helped them realize that no matter what age you are, you don't have all the answers, and life's not easy. I think often kids think, oh, parents, just life's easy for them. And as my girls were going through university and I was starting my business, we used to have this little thing that when they came home at night, we would do a kind of a thumb like this. And if we'd had a good day, we would do a thumbs up. And if we were having a terrible day, we would do a thumbs down. And I remember the first time I did a thumbs down, they were like shocked.
It's like, Mum doesn't have bad days. Yeah.
Why have you got something to complain about? And then when I started to say, maybe I was struggling with the technology, or a client didn't show up, or I hadn't made any money, or whatever the things were that I was struggling with, they would then talk about their problems with their study and exams in uni, and then realize that, okay, we can actually all help each other, because everybody struggles in some way every day. It's just not always the same.
I love that you shared that, because that perfect view of a mother, right? And so I know it's wonderful that our kids just look at us and go, oh my gosh, you're amazing. And sometimes they don't. And I appreciate that to those ladies thinking, my kids don't say that. They can all have ebbs and flows, but also we're trying to project this perfect version so that we keep them safe and well and balanced. But in that perfection or the image of perfection, sometimes it can then result in them not feeling comfortable, because, you know, any kid, particularly when you've got all those hormones and changes, you've got these tragedies happening every day that you just don't know how to cope with, like a friend doesn't like them or left them out of something, and their whole world is just falling apart, and they might as well just lie under the doona for days. You know, all these sorts of things happen, and then it's like, well, if nothing ever happens with mum, then maybe, you know, I can't share that. So I actually am all into, you know what, do the ebbs and flows of life and let them see those challenges, because there will be challenges, particularly anyone going into business, particularly, you know, you'll have, and I know in my startup incubators with all of my clients, they go, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me, because I'm having difficulty with tech or communication or funnels or pitching my business and all the aspects of anything new. And it's like the immediate response is, nothing's wrong with you. Every time you do something new, it's a challenge, you know, and it will be a challenge until you become more expert in that. And it doesn't also have to be perfect. So I can imagine that. So you've not only changed that sort of whole mother-daughter relationship or going into business yourself, but you're also now working with young girls in school. So what drove you to sort of take it to that very young level? Is there a core thing that you went, I've got to start really early? And how challenging was it to get into schools to be able to do that?
Yeah, thanks. So I think having my own daughters was part of the driver, because you just said there about, you know, they get upset if a friend doesn't return a call, or and I saw that with social media in particular, plus the pressure put on them in years 11 and 12 at school, because obviously the schools want them to do well, the parents want them to do well, they want to do well themselves. And I just started to think, golly, I don't remember having that amount of pressure when I was young and at school. And so the idea of being able to shape their thinking earlier, it just seemed a no-brainer, really. And I kind of wished I'd had somebody like me when I was at school. And I know they've got counsellors, but you know, counsellors tend to focus on the past, and I suppose, and you'll know this as a coach, that we look to the future, and it's how can we create the future and enjoy the present.
Yeah.
And I actually worked in a high school as head of pastoral care in the UK, so I had already had quite a bit of experience. So I think that helped open some of the doors. And the other thing was, I actually got part of a program where the local government were looking for business owners to go in and share ideas with school children, so that the school kids could understand what's it like to run your own business. And through that, I got to know some of the teachers, and I did a presentation on what it is that I do for women. And they were saying, oh, that would be great for our kids as well. So that's kind of how I got in there. And then, as you all know, reputation really is that once one door opens, someone can recommend you. And
Absolutely.
And if you get results, then people want you to come and do more of the same with their group.
What have been the biggest surprises to you from what you wanted to share with the girls? You know, often we go in with our recipe of, okay, you need to know this, and I think this would be helpful for you. And then, you know, the biggest tip in business is always ask your clients, what do they actually need and what are they receiving? What are the surprises that young girls today actually want to hear more about that you weren't aware of when you first started in this area?
I would say labeling was one of the biggest things, like how they see themselves as labeled by society and how they label themselves. So they saw themselves labeled as too emotional, too fat, too skinny, too weak, too whatever. One of them even said too kind. And I said, how can being too kind be a negative? I mean, isn't that shocking? It's like, oh, you have to toughen up, you're too kind. You think, wow, what kind of world do we live in? And then we looked at the labels that these girls wanted to be known for and to wear and to see themselves and the world to see them. And it was things like that caring and kindness is not weakness. It's a strength to be able to empathize with others and to put yourself forward to support others, that they could be strong physically and mentally, that they were smart and capable. A huge blocker was confidence. So many of them lacked confidence and belief in themselves. And I just think that's so sad at such a young age. The lack of confidence within the school environment or within the friendship environment or on social media, the whole comparison thing. It was a lot worse than I thought it would be. And a big thing was they had no idea how to change their thinking. And that's where it was wonderful for me, because I felt as if I had this fresh new audience. Because often women will say, oh yeah, I've listened to tons of podcasts and I've heard Oprah and I've but these kids with their young, fresh minds hadn't heard any of this stuff. And so it was really impactful.
Oh, how wonderful to have a fresh canvas that they're immediately inspired. I love that. And I think it's also so sad that, that children at such a young age are accepting those labels. And I think it's sad that they are, but also accepting them as a truth and then not having the toolkit to then be able to go, well, what do I do with that? Realizing that it's just someone else's opinion of you, and who are they? Another teenager has decided you're something that they, like it's meaningless when you're an adult, but when you're at that stage, and we hear of this, on the news and through campaigns and very tragic stories when people, of young ages can't cope with that anymore and unfortunately turn to self-harm and even suicide. And so it is such an important work to be able to, to be giving them those tools and a solution. How hard is it to then sort of go onto that journey? You do talks, but to actually keep that relationship that you then build on the layers of tools that are then helpful to them? Do you then repeat, come back and sustain relationships with specific groups? Do you hand over information and tools to the teaching staff? How does that work?
So the plan, that the latest thing that I've been doing is that I teach small groups within year 11, and then they implement within their year group, and then they also become coaches for younger girls. So that once, and obviously it's with the help of the teachers as well, but we start off with a small core, teach them a lot of the fundamentals, get them to make the changes in their life so people around them see the positives, and then they become a role model to teach the younger girls. So yes, I go back each term and we build on what we've already done.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. I know that I read somewhere that you are a big believer that happiness comes when you use your natural talents, for being, for yourself and for the benefit of other people. How do you bring about that quality that, when we're in such an environment that everyone wants you to be vanilla, they want you to fit in, they want you to be part of the crowd, whereas, when you, particularly as we were talking at the beginning of this conversation, when you're, 50 plus, you suddenly go, I want to be different. I'm going to have purple hair or green hair, whatever. I like my quirkiness. I love my uniqueness. How do you coach young girls to actually back themselves, to actually start exploring, well, what are those unique qualities that are going to bring out the best of you? And then believing that once they've actually developed that, they're actually going to be the top rewards that they can, or things that they can then give out to other people, like you did. You learnt about your generous and kind self, and when you were on your overseas time, and then you then realize that you were able to use those qualities and also give back to other people.
Yeah, so I basically talked about playing to your strengths. and your natural kind of God-given abilities, because that's when our confidence grows, when we know we're good at something. And so for some of the girls it was sport, for some of them it was being generous, for some it was debating. They all had something that they were good at. The problem is at school they're expected to be good at everything. And so we started with focusing on your strengths and your natural abilities, and then watching the confidence grow from that. And I talked about being a sheep, and do you just want to be the same as everyone else and not be a tall poppy and play low so that you blend in? You don't have to be arrogant and have green hair, and you don't have to outwardly be obnoxious or anything, but it's more about having that inner strength and finding that inner strength that's already there. So I say to them, everything that you need is within you. It's just been tapered, or your wings have been clipped, or you've been told to sit down and be quiet and be a nice girl. And so it's about, you can still be a nice girl without being passive. And so it's almost giving them permission and allowing them to give themselves permission to be who they were born to be. So we look at the strengths and how does it make you feel? So I'm always talking about, where in the body do you feel that anxiety or nervousness or fear, and where in the body do you feel that confidence? And you can just see their shoulders go back and their chin comes up, and I know I'm really good at that. And also giving them the power to say, I'm really good at that, and that's okay. It's not like, oh, you're being boastful, or it's actually all right within your own head to say, I like what I see. I like who I am. I know I'm a good friend. I know I'm a good daughter. I know I'm a good student. And just that positive self-talk, teaching them that as well.
Yeah. Yes, I think so important to be able to even just identify and have a true understanding of, what are my strengths, what are my qualities, it then will help you understand then your values and what your boundaries are, that whole sense of sort of self. And as the age of children that you're dealing with, there's still developing that. We're all evolving, we're all growing and changing in that way anyway, but more so for them. I also love what you said about that the world sort of expects you to be great at everything. Once you actually turn it into a bit more of a game, I've always sort of done it that way, because I had 4 kids in 2 years, for those listening in, 2 sets of twins, so my view of perfect was never possible because it was pretty crazy. And I think that actually was a saving grace by default, because I then sort of had very much I used to laugh and go, well, this is my strong moment, so don't blow it, don't ruin it for me, because I'm not so great at all these other things. And in a way it kind of worked though, and it sort of I never realized the power of that, because it allowed me at a younger age, I think, to actually realize that I had certain things that I was good of, and I was quite happy to say them, and also appreciating that I had weaknesses. We all have weaknesses. It doesn't mean that there'll be weaknesses forever. Sometimes some of those you'll grow and develop, and others you go, you know what, I'm just not into it, not interested. So if I was in the school environment, I might go, I don't mind going to that swimming carnival, but I'm certainly not going to do art or the athletics. I'll leave that to someone else who's great at it, and so everyone has their moment, and that translates as we, then mature and go into the working environment, right? You've got to be able to, go for that job and say, I'm extremely strong in this area, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they'll go, what's your weakness? And you're quite happy to then, that's an actual interview question, and you're quite happy to go, you know what, I'm not real strong on this, but that's why I partner up, or I work in teams in this way to bring out so that they can bring out the best in my abilities in these other areas. And that's part of life. And I think when we help young people to realize that we'll all have strengths and weaknesses, and that is a good thing, it really is life-changing in many ways. Yeah. So what would you have said to your younger self then, now that you're doing this in schools and you are a great role model for your girls? What would have changed for you? Do you think, would you have had a different career journey? Would you have been more wise to the issues like boyfriend surprises? Do you think much would have changed, and in what areas would you have been different?
I think I became a real people pleaser. I was the youngest of 6 siblings, and my mum had quite severe depression. And so quite young, I took on the role of keeping the peace in the house and getting my brothers to peel potatoes and wash dishes and, you know, sort of take care of things at home. And I think unwittingly, I brought that people pleaser thing into a lot of my other relationships, and my marriage, even my relationship with my kids. So if I was to go back, I would probably try and have dealt with that younger and earlier. And I don't know if people go to counselors and psychologists and that a lot more now, but I never really knew anybody that did that. Unless you were suicidal maybe, and certainly none of my friends went to psychologists, and I didn't, and it was sort of like everybody's mother had depression of some sort or was on Valium or whatever in those days. So to me it was kind of like normal, but I look back now and I think actually it wasn't so normal. My mum became the child and I became like the parent. So it was very freeing for me at 50 to say to everybody, you know what, I've had 40 odd years of looking after everybody else. The next 40, I'm going to look after myself. So that's something I would change early. And I say to my girls, you know, still be kind and generous. But if you look after yourself, it's actually about taking responsibility for your own life, your own mental health, your own physical health, your own earnings, and then other people don't need to worry about you and lift you up. And, you know, we should be able to do that for ourselves.
Exactly. And it's not selfish at all. You know, once you're then in that new state of elevation and empowerment, you're actually got so much more to give and to do, because you're actually well, right? You're more intentional with your actions. You're more present in the things that you're doing. Generally, you are the person that people do love being around. Totally. And then, so for those listening into or thinking, okay, well, you know, Anne's gone and set up a business, you know, 50 plus. What have been the biggest learnings for you going into business at that stage of life?
Oh golly, there was so much to learn. I was not at all good at technology, so I suddenly had to learn how to do Facebook ads and LinkedIn connections and all the social media marketing side of business. When I started my meetup, it was quite easy, and we just met in person, and I'd send out an email to people. And then the more that things grew and the more people would say, oh, but if you're a business owner, you should do this and do that. And then I think I got caught up in the doing everything. And I started to not enjoy it because, again, I wasn't playing to my strengths. My strengths are the speaking and the coaching and the inspiring. And when I got caught up in the technology side of stuff, I really started to not enjoy it. So, and I know you've done this, like reach out and get people who are experts in their field to help you, because although you'll spend money, you'll save time, you'll save frustration, you'll save energy, and you'll learn from others. So I found that very difficult. But I also, some people have said to me, have I found it hard as an older woman to get started? And in a way, I haven't. For me, I just think it's amazing that at this age I can start a business online, and that I can work from home and I can work my own hours. And I actually think that's fabulous. And I see it now. I had one funny story of a girl. She was probably in her 30s, and I was coaching her through some stuff, and she said, oh, Anne, it's so nice to have an older woman that can help me. And I'm looking over my shoulder going, where's the older woman? She means me. And I was like, oh no. And initially I was a bit shocked, and then I thought, right, I'm going to take this as a positive, and I'm going to become a woman of wisdom. And I'm going to be able to share what I've learned with these younger women that are coming through corporations and getting cheated on by boyfriends and all the things I've already been through, and how did I deal with it and turn it into positives. So I actually think we're very blessed to be able to do what we do in this day and age.
Yeah. So wonderful, so wonderful. And yes, I know if we were bolder and braver or had technology at our hand in those earlier years for us, it would have made our life a lot easier. When you know, right, when you how many hours you had traveling, to the city, to just transport.
Yes.
Lunch hours that you have to take extends the day, instead of just doing things now. Oh my gosh, it really would have just rocked my world to be able to have those opportunities. There's other challenges, of course, and we can always sort of, think things are easier now. Some things are, and some things are harder, as we've chatted about today. So when people go to your website, annemckeown.com, what are they going to find when they reach out to you? What's the experience going to be? What can you offer them in your services?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. I actually have a free book that they can download. It's called How to Take Back Control of Your Life. And it was basically when I started my meetup, the women there said to me, how did you turn things around? How did you manage your kids and your husband and without divorcing everybody? And so I just put together, I had to go back and think about it. What did I do? Because at the time it was a kind of natural progression. But there's lots of questionnaires within that book. There's lots of things that can help listeners to look at where they're at and where they want to be and how they might be able to get there. I also have a mini video series, which is sort of like 10 steps to success, because I work with business owners as well. And how did I start my business and get it to grow? And I also offer a free 30-minute sort of quick discovery session. If somebody's a bit stuck and not sure how to move forward, then they can contact me, and I'm very happy to. I love people, I love women, and so I love being able to kind of help them problem solve. So please contact me if that a 30-minute session would be of help, because I actually thoroughly enjoy doing it.
You're in your happy place, and that is so much value that you're sharing at annemckeown.com. Like, that's amazing. Download a book, watch some videos, have an opportunity for a 30-minute discovery call, chat, get to know where you're at that time. And so I think that's a very generous sort of giveaway, if you like. And I think for a lot of people, just starting at that first step of just, if you're listening in and go, I'm still unsure of what my next steps are. Sometimes it's really hard to even ask, because you go, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I need at the moment. I want a few things, but I don't know what my true needs are, because I'm actually in a rut and I'm actually stuck. And, and I feel like everyone else seems to have it together and I don't. And usually it's because that's right. There's a little missing link that you're not aware of yet. And sometimes it's actually just taking that big, bold step to lean in, download an ebook, watch something, just pull yourself out of that comfort zone just a little bit, not too much. Don't freak yourself out, and just take that step. And then when you read it, it then suddenly makes you start thinking, thinking about things in a different way, or even just reaching out and connecting with someone who has, been through those experiences before and is happy to share with you. So many people are just too busy, and we can often feel incredibly lonely or just disconnected. And so I think that is absolutely amazing. So thank you for sharing that. And it's been such a delight to have you on my program today.
Thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it too. And look, I really admire the work that you do. I just think, we're kindred spirits, I think, and the work that you do is just incredible. And I believe that women supporting women is more than just a slogan. We have to actually do it in action as well as words. And you do that.
It's such a pleasure. And I just love this platform because every week I get to have conversations with women around the globe and neighbors, as we've found out, and just hear what each other are doing. And there's so many amazing, amazing things that people are doing. And some of them have been completely planned, and others it's because of our lived experience and our journey, and it suddenly takes us somewhere. But it never ceases to surprise me how, often through these bizarre experiences that you couldn't have pre-planned, you end up at this destination and go, you know what, like you today, you're in your happy place. It certainly, had a surprising journey too. But once you've actually found it, just treasure it and just love it and max out on it, and that's right. I'm all into overloading and going crazy on your strengths because that's where your true happiness will lie. And you can outsource the rest, everybody else. I'm a total lover of that. And let's face it, it'd be a bit boring if we were all fantastic at everything.
That's
So
right.
it's been such a delight to have you on my show. I look forward to hearing about your future success.